of all the international teams this week. This happened 2 weeks ago as well. So well done to those teams, and we'll give you, you'll be getting more feedback down the line. I have got some feedback from some of the people, and there's some very interesting things that are coming out, and your own strategies and the way that you are thinking about it. Be sure that you still do your readings. It seems like some people are not doing your readings out of the prescribed text. So just make sure that you are doing those, because those are quite important for the kind of understanding that you need for strategy, that it's not just an arbitrary. Make sure that you, particularly the prescribed text, it seems apparent from some of the quizzes and so on that people are not reading it, and they're just giving it a shot without having read the text to start with. So hopefully none of you that have joined us on the Zoom session tonight are doing those kinds of things. When it comes to the, I'll have more to say about that on Saturday. Hopefully everybody's going to be able to join us. We got some good stuff that's coming up, particularly some inputs, and I'm going to be making it very clear on Saturday what I expect from the last assignments and your videos in particular, because those videos count for a lot in the last week, and hopefully you're all going to be able to respond to those appropriately. So what I want to discuss tonight is a continuation of the kinds of things that we've been discussing already, particularly around, where are we now? Fortunately, I'm at Monash, so I can call on Shingi to say, where's my, oh, I hear some little voice that's over here. There we go. That's it. So I hear a small voice that might have joined us. Make sure your microphone's off unless you actually wanted to make a contribution to the discussion this evening. So one of the key things that people have asked me a number of times is, so this is all very cool, but in order for us to understand why we're doing strategy, there's got to be some kind of change. We spoke about this previously as well, saying that strategy, if it is good, it's not just business as usual. It's not just a trend. There will be some change that comes out of it. So in understanding why we have to go through the pain of change, it's not only to remain competitive, it's to stay in business, it's to have a competitive advantage in the marketplace, and to be sustainable in the long term, as opposed to just a little quick fix and a little thing where you are throwing around some coins to make a little bit of money on the short term. Strategy is always long term. Remember, right at the beginning, from our run concept, it's a marathon. It's not just a sprint, it is a marathon. So why do strategy? Well, part of the need for us to be studying and understanding strategy now more than ever is because of our history and our place in history right now. The thing is this: the world is on the edge of another massive exponential growth curve in human history. And this is as a result, to a large extent, because of technology and also some of the geopolitical and economic forces that are coming to bear on all of us. And if we are not doing strategy within our organizations, we're going to be the lesser for it. So what are the kinds of things that we are talking about? Because every generation says, yeah, we got a lot of changes that are happening and so on. But you must remember that there's been certain points in history where change has been exponential. If you just go back in terms of some of the strategies, socio-economic things, imagine doing a pestle exercise in 1895. In 1895, organizations that might have been doing strategy, and believe me, there were some actually, amazingly so. There were organizations setting up their vision, not doing it as in such a scientific and sophisticated way as you've done it in the last couple of weeks, but there were some organizations setting up their future. So in 1895, there were no motor cars, there were no airplanes. Life was more or less the same as it had been for the last couple of 100 years. There was steam power, But that was very localized in some of the small cities, and they called cities those days what we would call a small town these days. And as a result of that, there were a couple of little factories, but urbanization was just a newish thing. It wasn't really taking off. And so if they had done their pestle exercise then, and people would have said, so, okay, we want to look at the politics, we want to look at economics, we want to look at social forces within our world, we want to look at technology, we want to look at the environment, and we want to look at, you know, the legal, political, or legislative sort of forces that might impact on our community and on our organization in particular. Let's throw forward another 25 years because things are happening very slowly. So 1895 to 1920, suddenly the world was a completely different place, because what happened in human history then was that there was this exponential curve and very few people saw it coming. Some did, and they were able to benefit from it. But in a short 25 years, there was an incredible change. First of all, the First World War happened. A lot of nations, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere, were involved in that, and some of the nations in the Southern Hemisphere got roped into that as well. There were motor cars for the first time. There were aeroplanes for the first time. For the first time in history, people were able to, on a larger scale, look down in a perpendicular way on the world and see the earth below them as opposed to over there. Not only that, there was penicillin. A lot of people that could have died were not dying because of penicillin and advances in medicine. The feudal system, particularly in some of the developed countries, had broken down. There was a great move towards democracy around the world. That only really kicked in where more than half the world's countries were democratic. Only in the mid-80s or early 80s, only half the countries in the world were actually democratic. So when we think of it in those kinds of terms, we think big changes happened in just a short period of 25 years, 20 years. Now we stand today on the edge of something like that that's going to happen. If we are to believe the people that are thinking and writing about the new technologies, well, there's going to be development that is happening faster, cheaper, more impact than ever before. Our lives are going to change over the next 20 years, and even before that in a big, big way. Artificial intelligence, we read about that every day somewhere, where motor cars are driving themselves. I've tested some of these. It's pretty scary when you've driven your whole life by yourself, and then suddenly you've got to let this car drive for you and take your hands off the wheel and your feet off the pedals, and this car drives for you because it's got sufficient artificial intelligence to keep you safer than you can keep yourself. And then there's health. There's a lot of things happening in health. People are living longer than they've ever lived before. Many of you are going to hit 100 years old, whereas in the past that was a big deal to hit 100 years old. I was speaking to a group of research actuaries. These are the guys that do all the very sophisticated calculations on life expectancies for some of the insurance companies. People being born in the last decade easily have a life expectancy of 120 years. So your kids, the little kid that we heard just now, is probably going to live to 120, you know, God willing. So when that starts kicking in, it changes a whole lot of things. A lot more older people and a lot fewer younger people, as we heard from the governor of the Reserve Bank just nearly 2 weeks ago now. So there's big changes in artificial intelligence, health, self-driving is going to change, electric cars are going to change. I just heard this week that Paris is hoping to be completely petrol and diesel free within the next 15 years. And it is setting the trend for many other major cities around the world where they're going to be going for electric cars as opposed to the petrol and diesel kind of cars that we have today. Education is changing significantly. People are going to be expected to know more with less. In other words, teachers are going to become more and more more and more diverse, and more teaching and instruction is going to be taking place like we are doing it tonight. One of our associates did a recent project up in Somalia where the education system is better than South Africa, but the resources are much less. And the way that they've done it is that they've got the best teachers that they could have, and it's a cadre of 150 to 200 teachers.
No,
And what they're doing. Sorry?
It's not a biggie.
Okay. All right. Just make sure that your microphone, bottom left-hand side, is muted. Eh? So what you have is that through electronics and through the media, people are able to teach anywhere in the world, and you can have the best teachers teaching a class that is remote and completely understaffed. So not only understaffed, under-resourced in terms of technology and that kind of stuff as well. 3D printing, we've had a discussion on that on one of the videos that I sent out to you. Agriculture is changing. It is already becoming very, very sophisticated, where smaller pieces of land are able to produce much more protein and carbohydrates for consumption for humans. And not only that, it's becoming more and more automated. So I visited, for my research, I visited a farm recently where one implement is able to do the job of 10 humans, and which previously it would have taken drivers and all that kind of stuff to do the same work in half the time of this one implement, which is controlled by one person sitting on a computer in an office a kilometer away from where the fields are. And not only that, that single one person can not only control that implement, but can control another 3 like it from something like an iPad. It's astounding. And so those are the things that are already here. Those are the game changers. Those are the high impact disruptors that we are going to have within our organization. Economics and jobs, they're going to change the world forever. And we're going to have to come up with strategies to deal with that. And so this is the kind of discussion that has to be taking place without us just saying it's just going to be more of the same. The trend is on its way. No, it's not just a trend. We are going to be living in a world for the next 20 years of massive disruptions. And so we're looking at artificial intelligence, cars, insurance companies. Real estate values are going to change already. You're seeing that in Johannesburg, where property around the transport nodes like the Gautrain are suddenly much more valuable than they have ever been in the past. Solar energy production is really, really kicking off. It's for the first time a couple of months ago, a state in India was able to produce energy from renewable sources, in other words, solar energy and wind, cheaper than they were able to produce it through fossilized fuels like coal and oil. So it's been done. Now other people are going to be able to do it, and as a result of that, the world is going to be changed forever. There's going to be water for all. Water is one of the scarce commodities around the planet, and through water purification, there's enough water and energy in the sea to keep the world's population going for a long, long time, because now the machines are able to deliver. I just hope they can get it to Cape Town in time before the dams run out. So there's going to be health. I've spoken about that already. 3D printing, we've spoken about that. Business opportunities and work. So what does this mean for business opportunities and work? There's an estimate that I saw recently that 80% of the world's jobs as we know them today are going to be redundant in less than 30 years' time. So depending on what you do and what kind of skills you have and have accumulated and so on, you might or might not have anything to do in 25 years' time, because a machine might be doing it for you. And you will be able to do other things, depending on how you view such things. So the whole world's job market, the whole thing of business opportunities and what we're going to be doing with our creativity and the way we respond to the needs around us. And remember what business is: solving problems for a reward. What are the kinds of problems that we're going to be able to do as business people, as opposed to letting machines do them for us? Agriculture, I've mentioned. Apps, that's a big one. Everything is now becoming an app, from the way that you run your fridge to the way that you do your ordering. I did some interviews today, and I was speaking to a person who says that people are building houses and they are sourcing all the materials in a container from hundreds, if not thousands of kilometers away. And it's all just been done. So they don't have to have a local supplier. All that they do, they place an order, a container arrives on the day that they want to start building. Every single screw and bolt and, you know, packet of cement is already packed and just has to be unpacked and assembled into a house. And that's all being done on apps. It's all being done on hyper connectivity and the way that the world is actually moving. Currencies are changing. We've spoken about blockchain before, particularly when the governor was here. Longevity, as I've said, there's an exponential curve. Every year, the life expectancy of the world's adult population below 30 is increasing by 3 months. So every year, because of medical technology, the expectancy on your life is increasing by 3 months. That's amazing. And that is an exponential curve that's going to get quicker and quicker. Education, we've spoken about that already. So that's why we have to do strategy. When we look at these things, and I introduce this now because you've already done your pestles, hopefully a couple of weeks back. I didn't want to preempt your game and give you a heads up on some of the things that you need to be looking for, but this is the stuff that you need to be looking at and saying, if we are going to have a successful organization, if it is going to be competitive in a global way or even in a local way, you've got to consider the kinds of big disruptors that are going to be happening in our society and in our organizations and in the way that we solve problems in order to get a reward for them. So are you stuck just in a trend? Are you stuck in the way that things have been done forever and ever? No, I hope not, because your strategy is going to change all of that. And not only that, you're going to be able to be competitive. You're going to be able to win with a sustainable strategy that keeps you going for much longer than the next 20 years. So I have been asked this question as to how do we manage ourselves and what is this whole thing of quality when it comes to work? Well, there's, excuse me, got to look after that health that I was talking about. So there's got to be a couple of things that have to impact on the way that we do our strategy and the quality of our work. It all comes down to 4 things. Yeah, just 4. When you take on any project or you take on any kind of unit of work, if you don't have consideration for these 4 things, you're going to be missing out on some of the key ingredients of being successful, and as we will see in a moment, of being excellent in what you're expected to do. So when we look at the quality of our work, you can see that on the left-hand side over there, there's that little curly bracket. Let's just say that that is a quantity that indicates the quality of work that is expected in this particular project. So it could be world-class, it could be continent class or quality, it could be just local or regional or mediocre or something like that. And as a result of that, we are able to establish this is the quality that is needed. What goes into creating the quality is these 4 components. First of all, there's time. We have to spend time on doing the kind of things that we have to do. So if you've got a lot of time, and these are all flexible, you can move them into bigger components or smaller components of the quality. So you've got to spend time on anything that's worthwhile. You've got to spend some time. In addition to that, you've got to spend effort. These are the kilojoules that you throw at it. It is the number of people with all their energy that they throw at it. That's effort. And it's not always related to time. Yeah, sometimes time and effort, there's a counter relation, but not always, because you might have 100 people that are actually able to just put in, 1 hour of their time, as opposed to you working for a week solidly and not able to get the same thing done. So we're talking about effort over here, not just time. In addition to that, there's money. There's got to be some capital behind any project usually. You've got to be able to spend some money at least to make this thing work. And then lastly, there's what I call talent. Talent is the accumulation of your skills, your experience. It is the talent that you are born with. And as a result of that, you've got these 4 things: time, effort, money, and talent. Those things go into creating the quality of work. Now, they're all flexible. So for example, I'll use one directly out of my own life. Somebody comes to me and says, hey, Mark, we want we've looked at you, we know your talent base, and we want a conference. I have to ask the first question and say, what quality conference do you want? They say, world class. Cool. When do you want it? Oh, in 2 weeks' time. Now, to organize any conference, let alone a world-class conference, in 2 weeks is almost impossible. So the 2 weeks, just a very little time, not enough, maybe, but they're looking for quality of work. Then I ask them, I say, look, well, my company is very small. I got a couple of people, and have you got any others that I could borrow from your company to actually help us with the effort? You know, there's a lot of phone calls to be made in a short period of time. We just need kilojoules. We need people to actually help with this. They say, no, we don't have any spare people at the moment. You're just going to have to do it all yourselves. Say, okay. So the time is less, the effort is less. They know what my talent is, or the cumulative talent in our little company. And so what's going to fill the difference? A lot of money. So, and then there's the talent. So that's how you can deliver quality of work without a lot of time. You just got to have a lot of money. So you can throw money at the problem, and that compensates for less effort and less time, and sometimes even less talent. If you have a lot of talent, you don't need so much money or effort or time, because you've just got an overwhelming amount of talent maybe. You know, I know some people that are in the recording industry, they can go in and do a one take, and it saves the studio's time, and it saves editing time because they are so talented. It just actually saves money. On the other hand, and this is also what has happened in the past, I had a bunch of NGOs, and they approached me and said, we want a big conference. What kind of quality? Well, world class. When do you want this conference? 2.5 or 3 years time. So in other words, lots of time to organize this thing. So, okay, so you're a bunch of NGOs. I'm predicting what's going to come, the question after next, but do you have any people that could help? Yeah, we got dozens and dozens of volunteers that really like the stuff that we do. So yeah, they can help. So a lot of effort can be going into this. And then the next question is an obvious one. NGOs, how much budget have you got for this? Not much money, hey? So little money, and then we know what the talent is. And so you can still deliver high quality, even though you might not have money. And you can actually compensate for the lack of money with time, effort, and sometimes more talent. So, excuse me. So when we start looking at this, we can start seeing how we can maybe even generate excellence. What is excellence? And I've seen a lot of that when people start talking about their vision and their values and their ethics and the culture of their organization. Or we strive for excellence. And then I ask them and say, so what is excellence? And usually they don't really have a clue. And that is rather tragic, because excellence is fairly easily defined. Excellence is being able to deliver more than the expectation of what you have. So if you're able to deliver more, then what? The quality of work. And it's more than the quality that is expected. So you can see that these two curly brackets on both ends of the slide are different sizes. So the one is the quality of work that is expected. Towards excellence on the right-hand side means a bigger quality. And how are we going to get that? Especially if the budget is the same. So the time, the effort, the money, and the talent, that hits the standard quality of work and the expectation. If we are clever about what we do, or we're lucky, we can, or unlucky rather, we can sometimes just deliver under that because we don't give enough time to it. We don't put in enough effort, even though there might be a lot of money that we put into this. We're wasting people's money because we deliver something that is below excellent. And that's tragic. On the other hand, we put in a lot of time, a lot of effort with less money, and we can deliver something that is excellent. So in your strategies, you're going to have to decide on these things. How much time do we put into this particular project, or that particular market, or that particular product development that we need to undertake? Or are we seeing enough of our clients so that they can actually see the benefit of our services? How much effort are we putting in? Do we have enough people? And are our human resources sufficiently equipped so that the effort that they put in is efficient and efficacious? And then the budget. The budget always plays a part. And then very importantly, the skills, the talent that goes into delivering on the strategy. Next week, we're going to be able to see how important it is to have, oh, and you've done a little bit of that this week as well, how important it is to actually have the right kind of skills development to deliver on the strategy that you propose and to put into your organization. And that's the talent. It's not only being able to buy in the people with the natural talent. Sometimes you've got to take the people, reskill them, and step them up into new roles that they've got to undertake. For yourself, though, there's another question. And here I'm speaking not so much about strategy, but a personal thing over here. You guys, you're leaders. You are going to, at some stage in your career, you're going to be in danger of burning out. You're going to be frustrated because you can't get done what you think needs to get done. And as a result of that, it's going to lead to a certain amount of anguish, anxiety, and maybe just exacerbate the problem. You might even just give up. Don't do that. What you've got to do is, again, for yourself, develop a strategy. What is the strategy that you need to be looking for yourself? So it goes back to the same stuff. Your life revolves around time, effort, money, and talent in terms of your outputs strategically. And so if you look at the quality of work that you're able to deliver anywhere, be it your own business, somebody else's business, or the public service, there's a quality that you are putting out over there. And that is time, effort, money, and talent again. But that is related to the stuff that you do and that you put into your own life, and particularly if it's your own business or your own enterprise that you are building up now, and the strategy that you might be creating even as we speak, you've got to relate these things to make sure that the balance is right in your life. Have you got enough time? Are you able to put in the effort? Have you got sufficient money and capital and funds? And the talent, what are you doing about your talent? So when it comes to the quality of your life, that relates to the quality of your work. Quality of life, then you get the quality of work. But then also, because of the quality of work, it increases the quality of your life as well, if you treat it correctly and strategically. So you can't have time unless you've got commitment. When people say, no, they don't have time, it's not really true always. It just means that whatever it is that they didn't do wasn't important enough. If it is important enough, you will be committed to it, and you will create the time for it that is necessary. And that's just one of the laws of all humanity. If it's important enough, there will be time enough for it. You will make it within human expectation. If you want to put effort into anything, remember I said this is about the kilojoules, this is about actually throwing yourself into a cause and a commitment and some effort sort of action. So to get effort going, you've got to have health. Are you looking after your health? I come across so many leaders that they are just so busy, they don't think that health is that important. And as a result of that, it is neglected. It's not important enough for them to make a commitment to their own health, which seems really weird because then they get unhealthy and they can't do anything anyway. So to put any effort into anything, you've got to look after your health. Make it a priority. That's just one of the things that I'm trying to get all leaders to understand. Look after yourself. That your health goes, everything else goes as well. When it comes to money, well, you want to have some kind of wealth plan. Are you developing a wealth, particularly if you're in a startup or even in a turnaround kind of strategy with your organization, or you're looking after the budgets in the public sector? What are you doing about the money over there? And is the money sufficiently well managed so that you can actually spin it back into creating the quality of work that is necessary? That's wealth creation. And then talent is an obvious one. That's the development of your skills, taking that which you have been given naturally, which is your standard talent, and then developing that. It's one thing just to have a lot of talent, but let me tell you now, and this is one of the big maxims that I love, talent is not enough. That's it. Talent is not enough. You can have the most talented sports person in the world. Today, they have been probably practicing. Why? Because talent isn't enough. Maybe sometime in the past, it was good enough just to survive on your talent. But nowadays, because the world is so competitive, talent is not enough. You have to practice. And so that's why you develop a skill. You develop skills in leadership, you develop skills in management, you develop skills in a whole number of different areas so as to completely emphasize the talent and fully exploit the talent that you might have been given already. So that's just on a personal basis for you, leaders. Make sure that you build that into your life. Make sure that you've got the right commitments and you're creating the right priorities in your life. Make sure that you've got health and some kind of health plan that is keeping you healthy enough to put the effort into the things that are important in terms of your business and in terms of your organization. Make sure that your wealth plan is working for you so that you're able to sow it into your business. You're able to help turn it into the turnaround strategy of the organization that you're strategizing for, or if it's in the public service, make sure that you're looking after the wealth sufficiently to make sure that it has maximum effect in doing the work that it's supposed to be doing, the money that is. And then when it comes to talent, you've got to have some kind of skills development plan, and I hope that is why all of us are actually going through this MBA together, because that's part of developing your skill so that you can have the talent that is going to deliver the quality of work down the line. So there it is. A couple of little key things that you need to be thinking about. It needs to be part of the scroll that's going on in the back of your mind when you're developing strategy. Do we have sufficient time, effort, money, talent in the places where we need them in the organization? And then quietly you ask yourself, you say, do I have sufficient time, effort, money, talent? In other words, am I well committed? Do I have the right priorities? Am I healthy enough? Am I wealthy enough? Am I well enough skilled to be able to deliver on that which is required to deliver this quality of work that is required from you? So that's your quality of life and your quality of work as well. So where does change start? People talk about change all the time. And we started off this evening's little talk on change. Why do we need to have strategy? Strategy is going to lead to change. So you're going to be confronted with change a lot. And now what you've got to be able to do is start understanding that where change is imposed, it might just be a temporary thing. Because long-term, permanent change, as we discussed last week, has to do with your belief system and what is true for you, what takes place in your mind, because that's where you do your thinking. So you think things, and then that changes the way you do things, and then that changes what you have. So when people talk about, we don't like what we've got over here, we don't like what we have, and you say, okay, so what's happening? Is it going to change? Yes, we've got to change what we have. The world is not a good place. We've got to change the world. So where does that start? It starts in your thinking. And that is why there has to be such consideration in the strategy that you have to plan and that you have to think about or put into practice. It starts with your thinking. So as you think, you change your thinking, you will change your doing, you will change what you have. If you don't change your thinking, you won't change what you do. If you don't change what you do, we'll end up having the same world that we've had for a long time already, and there won't be any changes. So change your thinking so that you can change what you do, so then we change what we have. Now that goes not only for us as individuals, it also goes for the organization in which you find yourself. If you are in an organization that is stuck, and you come with this wonderful strategy that's going to save the organization or make it more competitive or just help it to survive over the next couple of decades, and people are resistant to that, well, we're going to talk about that a little bit more probably on Saturday, but people don't like change too much. So what you've got to do is you've got to focus on their thinking. Don't always just focus on what they do, because that might just be a temporary thing just to make you happy. Focus on their thinking. If they change their thinking, they will change what they do. If they change what they do, we'll change the world. So the effective impact that is necessary, that comes out of a strategy, I want to go through this quickly and then hopefully release you to go and focus on your simulation and your other assignments. So effective impact talks about bringing change. And there are many sports these days, big team sports. The game continues by itself, and then you have some amazing players sitting on the bench. And you think, so why did that person not play from the beginning? At a particular point in the game, off the bench, the coach says, go on and take the position as a halfback or whatever it is. And that's when an impact is experienced and the game changes, because that single player can change the game. They're a disruptor. And that's where you, as a leader, need to be able to strategically bring about the change that is necessary to change our world and change your organization. So impact brings change. Business leaders, we've got a great history of being change agents, but at the same time, there's also a history of compliance. And sometimes it's much easier just not to do the right thing always, but just to comply and go with the flow, because it's easier to go with the flow than to make a big change and get people upset. That's rather tragic. So the problem is, as I've said a number of times before now, and hopefully it's sinking in, significant growth is always going to take place outside of our comfort zones. Significant growth always takes place outside of our comfort zone. And this is the imperative part of what leadership is. leaders have to bring about change. And we are going to discuss that on Saturday. But if you are bringing about change, it means that you're bringing about some kind of pain. Because people don't like change, really. They like to be comfortable, stuck in their little comfort zone. So when you bring about the change that is necessary through the strategy or through some great new idea, there's going to be a certain amount of resistance, there's going to be pain, and people don't like that. However, think about it in your life. The times when you have grown most, there's been a lot of discomfort. There's been where you've had to grapple with new ideas. You've had to come to terms with new concepts and maybe people, situations. And so a lot of organizations now make a conscious effort to bring about change on a regular basis. I worked with one organization. It was an unwritten policy. I say unwritten because if it had been written, people would have just objected on principle and been quite upset to see that they were being used in this kind of way. Their policy was that every 18 months, everybody in the organization had to be relocated into a different workspace. Every single person, every 18 months. So what that meant was, it was just a physical move. It was geography. So from being on the second floor, people had to move to the fourth floor. And there was always good reason for it, of course. But actually behind the scenes, there was some very good psychology in it as well. Because what they found with these divisions and these departments that moved, just after the department moved, without even asking for it, policies and procedures were changed. Old systems were thrown out and new systems were brought in that were more efficient and effective. And that was just as a result of the change and people moving out of an old comfort zone where everything was just the same. They walked in the morning, put their briefcase on the same place at more or less the same time, switched on their computer in the same way, and while it was booting up, went and had some coffee with the same amount of sugar and the same amount of milk, came back speaking to the same people, more or less having the same kind of conversations and did the same kind of work. No growth took place. It was just a trend. And so to have the growth that is necessary to respond to the strategies that you have created, there's got to be some kind of change. And that's going to be outside the comfort zones of not only the people that you're working with, but also you, yourself. So you're going to have to come to terms with that and deal with it. There's 5 big questions that we have to ask of any key strategy to make sure that it's got the impact that is necessary. And these big questions are this. First of all, what's your purpose? We've spent some time looking at this. And the purpose says, why am I here? What am I doing? Where do I want to be? This is the purpose of our organization and of individuals as well, but particularly for organizations in terms of your strategy. I did see some people mentioning in their assignments that people are moving away from the terminology of having a mission statement to rather having one of purpose. And there's a lot of validity to that. There's no hard and fast rule, but a lot of organizations are moving that way. So what is our purpose? That's the first question. Second question will be a kind of question that says, do we really want this purpose? You know, if we say this is our purpose, to be doing this thing and to be going to this place and changing things in this kind of way, you've got to say, do we want it? And if you don't really want it and there's no real buy-in, there's going to be big problems and people are not going to go with you in this journey of your strategy. The next question, number 3, is do we believe that we can get what it is? So you might come back to your organization and say, I've developed this amazing strategy. We have consulted with the best minds in the universe to make sure that the strategy is going to work and so on. And people are saying, we're never going to be able to do it. Never. And so you've immediately got a non-starter because people have to believe that they can do something in order to put any effort or energy into accomplishing that thing that they've got to do. The next question, number 4, do we have the internal power to do this? Now, internal power has to do with the wherewithal. It has to do with skills, training, systems, processes, the kinds of things internal to the organization and internal to the people in the organization. Are they well-resourced? Are they well enough trained to be able to achieve your purpose, your big thing, your cause? And then lastly, do we have the external power to do this? Is our external environment sufficiently accommodating of the strategy? If we are just going to be shut down by this thing, or if it is illegal, or whatever it is, or we're going to run out of resources, or there's some kind of economic disaster waiting in the strategy that we're trying to ignore, It's not going to happen. You don't have the external power to do this thing either. There's forces beyond your control that are actually going to shut your new strategy down. So those 5 questions now start having an influence on the impact that you have as a leader in bringing about the strategy that is necessary where you are. So it all starts, remember we said it starts to change our world, we've got to change our thinking. And it starts in your imagination, your ideal future. So what do you dream of? There's got to be something that you dream of. That could be a strategy, it could be a place, it could be a person or a target, or it could be a future life. These are the things that are the images in your mind, and that's where your strategy starts as well. It starts with an idea. It starts with a concept that says it's not just a continuation of the same. There could be something really new and significant over here, either as a startup or as a rescue or a turnaround strategy or a revamping of our department. So what is it that you are dreaming of? Now, if it's just a dream, it's not going to be enough, because out of our imagination, there's 2 things that emerge. And people don't like talking about this, but it's true. Everybody likes to talk about the real nice things that imagination gives us. And that is this wonderful future that is going to be amazing. It's the vision, and it's this glorious new universe that we're going to create through our strategies. But at the same time, that same imagination, same part of your brain is going to give you fear. It's the wings of vision and the root of fear. So make sure that you are leading into the world with this 2-edged sword with the right edge. Move from the position of vision as opposed to from the position of fear. If you are fear-based, you're going to be making mistakes. You're going to be making decisions that are not based in objectivity, but based in some kind of emotionalism, which is not going to have the right kind of consequence once you have made the decision. So let's get back to this dream thing. So we've got this imagination that has happened. We've got this idea. It is the spark of this new strategy where we are going. So here's the dream. But a dream by itself is just a dream. A dream is quite limited, actually. So if we look at where a dream actually fits into the way that strategy and impact works, we do have to have it. There's a legitimate place for having dreams, because you got to want this thing. Do you want what it is that you're dreaming about? Do you want this thing that you have imagined? I hope you do. Otherwise, why bother? You know, don't want it, doesn't really matter, leave it alone. It's got to inspire you. It's got to give you energy. It's got to take you into a new place, way beyond where you're at. So do you want it? Hopefully you do. And that could be a low want or a high want. So here's the dream. Do you want it? Yeah. And that would sort of put you in the middle. If you want it, yes, I want it, I want it, I want it. That would make you high. And here's the dream. You want it? No. Nice for somebody else, but not for me. On the other hand, it's not just good enough to want something. You've got to believe that you can do it. Remember that we said was one of the main questions that you've got to ask. Do we want this new great visionary purpose that we have created in our strategy? And then, do we believe it? And again, that can be a high belief or a low belief of what you're able to do or not. And then that gives us 4 other positions in terms of the impact that we want to create. So if I really want it, but I don't believe that I can do it, it remains a dream. If I do know that I can do it, but I don't want it, you've done it before. In other words, you got the t-shirts, then you're just going to be bored. Being bored, having a new strategy and being bored with it, that's not going to help at all. So then you've got the area of being irrelevant. I don't want it, and I don't believe that I can do it anyway, then it's irrelevant. I've got some friends, one in particular, he climbs mountains. I like mountains from a distance. I look at them, I think they're very beautiful. He climbs Everest, he's climbed the 5 greatest peaks in the world. Some of them he's done without oxygen. It's amazing. It's fascinating. Do I want to go and climb Everest? No. Do I believe that I can do it? No. It's irrelevant. It makes for a nice conversation around a dinner party, but really, it's not something that is relevant to me. And so strategically, I'm not even going to plan for it. I'm not going to put any effort or energy into it whatsoever. So for us to start having our maximum impact, we've got to have our maximum action first. Act. So to act on something, I must want it, and I must believe that I can get it. Okay, so If you look at that, something that was nicely sort of identified, Martin Luther King Jr. way back. Remember his greatest speech probably is the one that he did on the Lincoln Memorial after the Million Man March, and he got up and he said, "I have a dream." And that's a nice little story because it wasn't in the original speech. It was there because there was a gospel singer sitting in the front row called Mahalia Jackson. And she kept on chirping him and saying to them, because she had heard him say this when he was at his church in Atlanta. And she said, she kept on saying, she wasn't even listening to the other stuff that he was saying. She kept on saying, "Give them the dream, Martin, give them the dream." And so he broke into this right at the end. He said, "I have a dream that one day my children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." What an amazing statement. So that's the dream. And when you talk about Martin Luther King Jr., everybody remembers the dream speech. That was, "I have a dream." But it was a dream. And then you get Barack Obama, who 8 years ago goes around the world saying, and what was his slogan? "Yes, we can." So on the one hand, we want this dream. And on the other hand, you had to have another person coming forward and saying, "Yes, we can." So that's a very nice combination. You got to want it, and you got to believe that you can do it as well. So it's not enough just to have action. There's got to be something else that actually brings us in. Remember, there were another 2 questions on this one. So what's your internal power? That can be high and low. Internal power, that has to do with your skills. It has to do with your ability, your talent. But you've also got to have external power. That's your influence for other people, your recognition. What do people sort of see in you, and do they give you external power? Do they give you a chance on the field as opposed to just sitting on the bench? Do they give you a responsibility, or do they keep it away from you? Do you have authority? Do you not have authority? So that could be high or low. The internal power can be high or low and actually have a consequence as well. So if you have lots of external power, or rather, let's start the other place. Lots of internal power, but no external power, you're just the unrecognized master. You're like a bomb that's going to explode because nobody's going to let you release your energy in any kind of way whatsoever, because there's no external recognition. There's no external responsibility or authority where there's external power that is given to you. On the other hand, the external power, put the person into position, but they've got nothing inside. Again, it's like that Cremora leadership that I spoke about the other Saturday. So once you've got that, you've not a weakling anymore where there's no power whatsoever. You're going to have something which is like just a position. You can actually see it there. There it is. Bottom right-hand corner, that's just a position where you've got a lot of external power, but no internal power. And that is tragic. So you've got to have maximum power. That's where you are a rocket, not just a bomb. A rocket is going somewhere. Big release of energy, but because it's been well constructed and there's a release of the energy in the right direction, now you've got something. You've got maximum action and you've got maximum power. Remember the big 5 questions? And that then leads to the maximum impact you can have with your strategy. So the action, remember, to have maximum action, do we want this? Yes. Do we believe that we can achieve it? Yes, we do. So then you have, just above that line up there, immediately you've got maximum action. But that's not enough, because there's a lot of people that take a lot of action and they don't achieve very much at all, because you've got to have power as well. Remember, how do we get power? There's 2 different kinds of power, internal power and external power. Oh, by the way to accumulate internal power is through expertise and being attractive, that's being approachable, making sure that people like you, and then being trustworthy. That's what creates internal power. You can create internal power through fear, but that's usually short-term. So internal power, be an expert, be trustworthy, be a nice person that people actually want to be with. People respond to, are influenced much more by people that they like as opposed to people that they don't like. So you've got those 2 kinds of powers that give you internal and external power. Then you've got the action, you want to do it, you can believe that you can do it. Again, 4 positions. If you've got a lot of power and you don't take any action, you've given up. And that is sad. Don't give up. On the other hand, and this is what I was referring to earlier, people take a lot of action, but they've got no power. There's no traction to what they do, and that gives you just endless striving. You're on a treadmill. expending all this energy, but not going anywhere, and the scenery hasn't changed. No action, no power. Well, then it becomes a release. You've got to recognize what you can change and what you can't change, and know the difference, and just have the ability to let it go. Let it go. Obviously, for you to have the biggest impact with your strategy, you've got to have maximum action, maximum power, and that's your maximum impact. So if you developed a wonderful strategy, that's fantastic. There's a world that needs it. The world is changing significantly, and hopefully you've done your homework in that regard, and the strategy that you're coming up with is going to be something that makes you competitive in a sustainable way into the next 20, 25 years. Be that a startup, be that a turnaround, be that a rescue of an organization that you're in, or having maximum impact and service within the public service as well. So strategy, very, very important. Impact, ultimately important. Otherwise, strategy ends up on a couple of pages sitting in a file somewhere on somebody's shelf, gathering dust, and it doesn't change the world at all. If you're going to have impact, you've got to change a person's mind so that you change what they do, so they change the world that we have. Thanks, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. Go and enjoy the evening, and we'll see you on Saturday. Hey, ciao, ciao.